All right, the Creative Act Part 6. So he goes to talk about ears and how powerful they are. He says, while the eyes and the mouth can be sealed, an ear has no lid and nothing to close. It takes in what surrounds it. It receives but can't transmit. The ear is simply present to the world, and when we hear, sounds enter the ear autonomously. So I feel like I never really thought about that, but it's definitely really true. I feel like even when I'm reading my book, like someone will start mowing the lawn, or like a truck will come by and the ambulance will start screaming, and you kind of obviously have those like ingrained thoughts in your head, like you kind of just know what they are based on the sounds that they give. And so bouncing off that, he says, the vibrations filling the space around us, the active sound waves hitting the body, the spatial perceptions they indicate, the internal physical reactions they stimulate, this is all part of listening. Certain bass sounds can be felt only in the body. They can be perceived by the ears. And so that goes to kind of what I was just saying, where you kind of just know, like a police siren, you know what it is and what it sounds like, and you kind of have that like engraved in your head. And so he goes to talk about, he's obviously into music and he's a producer, composer, and so he dives into music bouncing off this, and he says, he talks about headphones for speakers. He says, headphones can create an illusion, tricking your senses into believing you are hearing everything the music is offering. Many of us experience life as if we're taking it through a pair of headphones. We strip away the full register. So he talks about how when he's making music, he likes to hear it through the speakers because you can kind of hear every single detail a lot better, and you hear it from the perspective of someone actually listening to it. And so when you listen to headphones, it feels more dramatic and more cinematic, but it's kind of giving you like a kind of like a narrow presentation of what the song is. And so he says and recommends, if it's music you're listening to, consider closing your eyes. You may find yourself getting lost in the experience. When the piece ends, you might be surprised by where you find yourself. You've been transported to another place, the place where the music lives. I feel like that's so true. Like sometimes I try to give my eyes a rest, and I'll put a heat compressor on it, and I'll listen to music while I do that. And I feel like when I do things like that, I'm listening to music so much more deeply because all I'm hearing is the music. And so I'm not having this distraction of what's in front of me or having these like second thoughts. I feel like when you're listening to music and you're driving, you're kind of naturally obviously driving, and you're listening to the music, and you might be observing what's around you. So you're not really like focusing like purposely on the music. And so I definitely can see what he's saying when it comes to that. And then speaking of listening, he talks about like conversations, and he says, formulating an opinion is not listening. Neither is preparing a response or defending a position or attacking someone. To listen impatiently is to hear nothing at all. So he talks about when a lot of people speak or have a conversation or they're arguing, they're kind of thinking in the back of their mind, like what's like the counter or the response I should give them. And so you're technically not really listening to the conversation. You're kind of just you're kind of taking in what you think you're taking in, or what you think you should, I should say, and then you're kind of attacking them. So he's saying, like, listen to what people are saying with like no judgment, very neutral, and you're definitely going to listen to it in a different perspective. And so he says, the only goal is to fully and clearly understand what is being transmitted, remaining totally present with what's being expressed and allowing it to be what it is. Listening without prejudice is how we grow and learn as people. More often than not, there are no right answers, just different perspectives. The more perspectives we can learn to see, the greater our understanding becomes. Our filter can begin to more accurately approach what truly is, rather than a narrow silver interpreted through our bias. I feel like every subject can be, you can take notes when it comes to this. Like if you're talking about politics or music or culture or fashion or movies, whatever it is, you can take in someone's opinion and kind of observe it. And obviously you can take it in and you might still disagree with it, or you might think of it in a different perspective and be like, oh, I never really thought about that. But if you just kind of have your wall up and you have judgment instantly like coming out, how can you really grow if you're only open to that? It reminds me of music. Like when I was little, I only listened to certain styles of genres, and I think it's because I kind of thought that was what was accepted and what was cool. But as I grew up and I started to learn more about music, I realized how much more genres and how much more of a variety I actually really enjoyed. And I think it's because I started to learn more about music. I stopped caring what people thought, and I was just open to new ideas and just new lanes and new tastes as a whole. So now he talks about focusing your full attention on whatever activity it is you're doing. He says, consider how different your experience of the world might be if you engaged in every activity with the attention that you might be landing a plane. So he talks about like eating food, for example. I have a tendency to watch TV or like talk on my phone or do something while I'm eating, and I feel like it kind of ruins like the actual taste and the enjoyment of eating the meal. And so he talks about if you just did everything like strictly that, nothing else, then you would appreciate life more. And it makes sense. Like I feel like America, especially, at least I can only speak for that because I live here, but you kind of have a tendency to just be efficient, and being efficient means multitasking, and multitasking means that you're not really focusing on one thing at a time. And so if you're like in the shower, enjoy the shower. Don't think about like what you have to do in the day. Or if you're eating an apple, like enjoy the taste of that apple. So I definitely understand what he's saying. And bouncing off that, he talks about patience. He says patience is required for the nuanced development of your craft. Patience is required for taking in information in the most faithful way possible. Patience is required for crafting a work that resonates and contains all that we have to offer. Impatience is an argument with reality, the desire for something to be different from what we are experiencing in the here and the now. And so I feel like as an artist and just in general, you always just want what's like in the future, or you're always like, oh, like I can't wait to get here, or I can't wait for it to be tomorrow, or can't wait for my birthday, I can't wait for the vacation. You're always like thinking about the grass is greener and like what's coming up. And he's just saying like be patient, and like when you work on your craft, things will come, and like you're naturally going to get better, and whatever is to come is to come, and focus on the now. And speaking of that, he says, we can't force greatness to happen. All we can do is invite it in and await it actively. Even the masterpieces that have been produced on tight timelines are the sum of decades spent patiently laboring on other works. I love that so much. So basically what he's saying is, for example, as a producer, you're not going to be good overnight. You're going to put in the sweat and equity. Like you might be practicing your craft for like 2 or 3 years, and then eventually you're going to make that overnight hit. But it wasn't an overnight hit because you put in all those hours to get to the point where you're good enough to make that overnight hit. And so that has to do with patience, where you can't force something great to come out of it, but you can kind of put yourself in a good position and give you those assists and alley-oops and that quote unquote sweat and equity. It's like the 10,000 hours, where once you put in so many hours, you're going to naturally become great and get that greatness out of you. And he's talked about this in the past, but he brings up the beginners and the childlike mindset. So he says the beginner's mind is where innocence brings forth innovation. A lack of knowledge can create more openings to break new ground. And so he kind of says it's like childlike superpowers, where when you're a kid and you're like playing with your toys, you have such a, like your ability to create and innovate and think of these like out of the box ideas is just, it's so great and natural because you have nothing to go from. You don't have these like stereotype, prejudiced thoughts that you're kind of trained to think. And so he always says if you can just like approach things as a child and bring that like childlike superpower back, then you just end up kind of creating work that hasn't been done before, and you end up being very unique.